Okay, so there is no top of the hour sports update today. Hey everybody, I'm Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-Cities sports fans. The name of the program is Tri-Cities Sports Now, where we own the Tri-Cities on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. It's not just that, the fun story of the ETSU basketball team being snowed in on their bus in Hendersonville, North Carolina, was actually broken here. It's not just that. It's that we have the best guests and the hardest-hitting opinions in the market. And at 12:30, I'm going to be talking to Joe Rexrider, our old friend from the Tennessean. Hey, Titans, they're in the postseason. They're in the playoffs. They actually kick off the postseason against the Jacksonville Jaguars down in 37-degree Jacksonville. That was the temperature. At the same time, it was 44 degrees in Juneau, Alaska. I'll allow you to go and do this. We're getting praise here from Dominic, and I hope that I pronounced the man's name, Macau, saying it's a pleasure listening to me. Thank you right now here, because you can watch along no matter where you are in the nation or in the world on our Facebook Live page, 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. You can watch the program here on our Facebook Live, and if you didn't catch it, we archive it. So you can, catch up to date what we had to say and so on and so forth. Anyway, I want to begin today's program talking about something that I sometimes wonder, do I do this too much? But it's become contemporary today. Yesterday you heard Paul Zeiss talk about Jeremy Conklin, who was the defensive coordinator at Pitt. He also used to be an assistant at the Citadel, and he's becoming the new head coach at Wofford, which definitely impacts ETSU, conference rival, a lot. Could there be a out with the option in Wofford at Wofford eventually? It's a possibility and such. But, the defensive coordinator of Pitt, and you see a linebacker for the Pitt Panthers wearing number 25, let me get it right today, by the name of Elijah Zeiss. That's Paul Zeiss's son. And longtime listeners to WEMB can tell you that Paul used to interview Heath Schuler for us back when in the 90s. College student, we were both young, getting our careers started. And now he's the cock of the walk in Pittsburgh, actually, in terms of sports media, Paul Zeiss. Anyway, then his son is playing linebacker on the Pitt football team. So who better to know the new head coach into the Southern Conference? Someone who not only, has covered him, but his son plays for him. He's got that insight. So I looked to that, and that's an insight that only we can bring you here on 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities. The man that Conklin replaces today is Mike Ayers. And I'm a little surprised at how Mike Ayers has been forgotten and his tenure at ETSU just totally, and not wiped off the record books. You get a record book, it's there. But there's nobody in Johnson City moping after Mike Ayers wins 207 games at Wofford after leaving ETSU. And I do understand it was a long time ago, 30 years ago. But, hey, people in Baltimore, I think, always did wonder, what if Don Shula never left for the Dolphins? Would we still have the Colts? Probably not. I think it was never. It's always about the owner, and, oh gosh, the Ursays are just dreadful, even today. I mean, they got to thank their lucky stars that Peyton Manning, they drafted him. Then you look at a circumstance where just all sorts of things, the one that got away. The Phillies might have hired Ryan Sandberg. I'm going to throw this out there. Did the Phillies hire Ryan Sandberg as their manager because they realized, they couldn't get him to play again, but they always wanted him into the fold after Ryan Sandberg was traded away for nothing, Ivan de Jesus, many years ago, 35 years ago. But Sandberg becomes Hall of Famer, arguably best second baseman ever. That's an argument. I mean, it's always going to be subjective, but he's certainly at the, one worthy of discussion. And the Phillies, all they got was a shortstop who the year before hit 194. So there you are. I mean, this is, did the Phillies then, sort of say, well, we want him back into the fold. We want, we brought him up, be our manager, which didn't work out. Was that something that, there is very little discussion over the years of, boy, what would have happened to ETSU football if Mike Ayers didn't leave for Wofford? And I started looking back at this time to add to the embarrassment of what went on at ETSU at that time. Do you realize Wofford at the time was a Division II school? Not only was it a Division II school, but it was a 1-10 Division II school. And ETSU playing in what is now called the FCS. Back in those days, it was called Division I AA. I mean, that was just, huge in terms of, you don't lose as a Division I football program your coach to a D2 program, a 1-10 program at that. And there will be those that will say, well, he had coached at Wofford before. So what? He's an assistant coach there. Steve Forbes isn't going back to Central Arkansas. That's irrelevant. At the time, well, Ayers then becomes the coach. He takes the Terriers, slowly but surely builds them into not only a Division I FCS powerhouse, but into a 5-time Southern Conference champion. The year ETSU dropped football, their final season 2003 in the Southern Conference, Wofford won their first Southern Conference championship. How's that for irony? How's that for, boy, what did we do here? But ETSU, I've always said this, that ETSU, things can be absolutely dreadful, if not horrible, and they will tell you that they are stupendous, if not euphoric. We saw a press conference for Carl Torbush, who was 11-22, and all they could do was talk about how great he was. He built a foundation for this football team. Okay, but then why aren't you retaining any of the assistants? They may. Nothing has been announced. I can't get Billy Taylor to return my phone calls, but I understand why you'd want to stay low and all this. Billy Taylor, defensive coordinator of ETSU. You had a circumstance then where, he did it the right way. No JUCOs here. First recruiting class of Randy Sanders, first 4 players he signs, 2 of them are JUCOs. What is this for a foundation? You're totally going against it, it seems. But that's ETSU. That's the way they do things. And I look back, let me just explain to you what Mike Ayers, because he's now a retired coach, he's 69 years old, but yeah, when he was a young up-and-comer at ETSU, let me kind of take you back. He inherited a 6-5 program from 1984, went 0-10-1. 0-10-1. The one tie was to Liberty. And again, this gets me to start saying, you know what? I mean, Liberty, look what they're going to join FBS. I happen to think Liberty has a chance if they can get in with the right conference, and that's a big if, that they could be the Baptist Notre Dame. 1985, they're tying a winless ETSU football team. Next year, ETSU, they go 6-5. The big highlight mid-season, they defeated Furman, who was ranked 3rd in the country at the time. I will tell you this. I went to University High School. The only time I ever heard other people talk about ETSU football at University High, and right there on campus, was that Furman ETSU game in '86. That was it. 87 comes along. That turns out to be Ayers last season. ETSU beats NC State. That's their only victory in history against an FBS program, then Division 1A. Beat them 29-14. I remember, I think, a defensive score. Dick Sheridan was the coach at NC State. They were the defending ACC champions, if memory serves, but they didn't have a good record. They were 4-7. I looked this up. And then that gives the Buccaneers record 5 wins and 4 losses. But Mike Ayers loses his final 2 games of the season, one to a 4-7 Virginia military team, and the finale to a James Madison team going on to the playoffs. James Madison, of course, with 2 Paul Hamilton disciples on their coaching staff going and playing North Dakota State in the FCS championship game this Saturday. That's actually the matinee before the NFL playoffs in Frisco, Texas, the FCS championship between James Madison and North Dakota State. Back then, James Madison got blown out in their... I think they lost them. Did they lose them? It wasn't Marshall, was it? No, it wasn't, because Marshall wasn't any good back then, I don't think. Anyway, so that was the case, okay? And the idea, I think, that Ayers... Why did ETSU let him go back in those days? And I want to touch on this. I think that there was some discussion, well, look, we still remember that 10-1 year. I think there was some discussion, you beat NC State and then you lost to Virginia military. What's going on here? And that was the same, Keydets were 4-7 that year, same old losing Virginia military. I think that there was, I remember the Mike Ayers show. 11:30, Friday night. WJHL. Red Pitcher, the co-host. And I remember Mike Ayers just staring into the camera during the coaches show, which is never very good programming to begin. They still have coaches shows. Those things have been, that's kind of went out with the barefoot kicker, a bunch of propaganda, they do have coaches shows. Tennessee had one. I remember, yeah. And at 11 o'clock, I was watching the Butch Jones show, and then at 12:16, as soon as the show was over, they fired Butch Jones. All right, so they taped it in the morning, by the way, the Missouri-Tennessee highlights, and then, hey, Butch, now you're done with that here. We're letting you go. That's actually what they did. That's the coach's show. And they used to do this with they had one with Mike Ayers. He looked awful. I think another reason why maybe people aren't saying, well, what happened there? Was that Ayers never had major college coaching experience. ETSU was the biggest college he had ever been at the time. And ETSU then brought in Don Riley, who, by the way, is not Luther Van Dam. I know that's the rumor. He's not. But Don Riley, although an unsuccessful coach at ETSU, only winning 12 games, and plagued with the rumors that he was Luther Van Dam from Coach, he was the subject for that character. He was not, but that was the rumor that went around. He only won 12 games in 4 seasons at ETSU, but he had come from UCLA. He was the offensive line coach there. He was an ETSU grad. Looked like that was a step up at the time from traditional small college coach, getting all his players from Moeller High School in Cincinnati, it seemed, this sort of thing. So it looked like, at the time, okay, we're bringing in one of our own. Didn't work out. And Ayers went on to do great things at Wofford. And as the original point is, boy, why didn't this, but a thought, and here's the final thought on this. When Mike Ayers left for a Division II school with a 1-10 record from ETSU, that was probably the first dagger into the ETSU football program that would cause the program to eventually be cut and put on a 12-year hiatus, if you will, back in 2003. It took some time. I mean, ETSU made the playoffs in 96. But there was a loser's reputation. And let's also face facts. That first losing season that losing season in 1987 was the start of 7 straight losing seasons for ETSU football. Same time, Les Robinson, basketball coach, he's made the AD. And you got to think, I mean, officially it was talked about as a contract dispute, which is why Ayers left ETSU for Wofford. D2 Wofford, now Southern Conference champ Wofford. But I would just say this, contract dispute, that shows me basketball coach, made AD, and certainly at that time, the feeling was all the money was going to go, if you were Mike Ayers, or all the attention was going to go to basketball. By the way, it worked. ETSU makes the NCAAs 4 straight years. They're nationally ranked in 1991. 5,000-point scorers. It worked. The victory against Arizona in the NCAAs. Hey, it worked. But it did come because there's only so much money at these programs at the sacrifice of the football program, as Riley could only win 12 games in 4 years. Nobody cared, though. You were nationally ranked in basketball. Who cared if you stunk at football? Nobody cared. But when we look back at Ayers, and now, it's Jeremy Conklin today at Wofford and all, and we look back at why don't more people lament that what could have happened at Mike Ayers? It was never going to be in the cards for Mike Ayers, or really any coach outside of, I don't know if they brought in, Joe Paterno to come in here and, kick some butt or whatever. And, well, it's thankfully that they didn't do that, considering what we now know about Joe Paterno. But, great. If you brought in Bobby Bowden and he said, yeah, give him the keys to the program. Barring that, you had a basketball coach as the AD. And that was really the start of putting ETSU football into a position to fail. Now that's changed. ETSU has the full allotment of FBS scholarships. They bring in Florida State's offensive coordinator as their new coach. They build a new stadium. The record still isn't there. It still appears to be SOB, same old Bucks. And most disturbing, when the Bucks do go 11-22, they still want to tell you how wonderful everything is. But as we, realize the changing of the guard in the Southern Conference today, there really was, there were reasons why there isn't so much of a, whatever happened to Mike Ayers type of thing. And now you know. And I think that we can look at, the demise of the football program, maybe sacrificed with the entire support of the community. As I said, bad football program, good basketball team. Yeah, they'll take that. Nationally ranked basketball team. Who cares if the Bucks are going 2-9 in football? But what we didn't realize back then, and Mike Ayers did. Ayers retires as the 207 victories at Wofford, 218 overall. I think there's a weird way that those D2 victories actually get counted on his Southern Conference record. It's an odd way that the NCAA counts this stuff. But I will say that I believe Ayers is 3rd all-time in the Southern Conference in career victories, behind only Jerry Moore at Appalachian State and Wallace Wade. Yeah, the guy Duke Stadium is named after at Duke and Alabama. What do you think about that? So Jeremy Conklin comes in. You heard about him. Guy who makes players better is how we heard from Paul Zeiss. Wofford is, 2 years ago, Wofford didn't allow a 2-0 ETSU team past the 50 and beat them 34-0. The option stays, who knows? But it's interesting in Southern Conference football what's going on. Tri-City Sports Now comes back after this.
Tennessee Lottery.